I received a desperate call from my best friend, who had been dead for a decade. In a frantic quest to save her, I dove deep into uncovering the truth. To my horror, the real murderer of my best friend turned out to be my boyfriend. I glanced at my phone, which was still connected, showing an unknown number. Her tone, voice, even the slight nasal sound due to sinusitis were precisely as I remembered Rongrong's. This was no illusion. Yet, a decade ago, I didn't even possess a cell phone. How was it possible for Rongrong to make a call from 10 years ago to my phone today? With too many unanswered questions and only 20 seconds to act, I hurried. I composed myself and pinpointed the most vital question. Who is the killer? I don't know. Each time I wake, I have just 30 seconds to flee before the killer appears from behind and knocks me out. Is the killer male or female? I don't know, she sobbed. I bit my lip, thinking rapidly of any other critical questions to ask. However, I had forgotten. The Rongrong from 10 years back was a sweet, naive soul. The poise in her recent answers might just be the result of her forced maturation through these repeated deaths. In that moment, reverting to her usual vulnerable self under my protection, she preempted my next question, her voice breaking with sobs. Xiaoyun, I only have 7 chances to come back. You must save me. I can't face death. What? Only 7 chances? I don't know, it was a mysterious figure who told me. He said that if I die a 7th time, there's no coming back. Fearing disbelief, Rongrong urgently added, It's real, Xiaoyun. Every time I wake up, there's a countdown on my phone, and now it's at 4. A countdown. This meant that excluding tonight, she had just 3 opportunities left, each lasting only 30 seconds. The urgency was palpable. Tears welled up in my eyes as I fought to steady my voice. Rongrong, you. But before I could complete my thought, Rongrong screamed as if facing an imminent threat. Xiaoyun, save me, ah! The line was abruptly cut off, and in those final moments, I could just make out the deep, heavy breaths of a man. Monster! With eyes blazing with anger, I cursed as I opened the call log. It displayed an unknown number. I clicked to redial. Your number is incorrect. Please check and dial again. Unwilling to accept it, I attempted the redial again. Your number is incorrect. Please check and dial again. I redialed doggedly, over a dozen times, but was met each time by the same chilling, mechanical female voice. Frustrated, I threw my phone onto the bed with a resounding thud. Resignation washed over me, tears streaming. I could only be reached by Rongrong in this one-sided way. The sound of heavy breathing before the disconnection still haunted my ears. Monster! Monster! It struck me then. Rongrong's death was no mere accident. Now that Rongrong's own attempts at escape had failed, she would surely use one of her 3 remaining chances to resurrect and call me for help. I was determined to save her. Revived in spirit and wide awake, I picked up my phone and sent a leave request to Chen Xiao, the chief editor of the newspaper. After putting on a jacket, I sat at my desk. I opened the drawer and retrieved something I had thought I would never need again, the comprehensive files on Rongrong's case. I can recall distinctly the day Rongrong met her end was June 8, 2005, the final day of the college entrance exams. In Ning'an City, there's a youth street, a row of bustling food stalls. From some unknown year, each year after the college entrance exams, graduating seniors from various schools would invariably flock to the street in their uniforms for their farewell meal. Our class was no exception, with our gathering planned for the evening of June 8th. As the evening wore on, everyone drank until their faces flushed crimson and their necks swelled. I have a notoriously low tolerance for alcohol, so after the initial toast, Rongrong graciously drank on my behalf. The festivities continued unabated until 3 in the morning, long after other diners had departed, leaving only our class lingering. With the scent of alcohol clinging to her, Rongrong suddenly rose from her seat, extracted the latest Nokia phone, and handed it to the restaurant staff, requesting a group photo to commemorate our night. Once the photo was captured, we began to form small groups, readying to head home. Rongrong lives conveniently close, nestled in the Binjiang district, a mere stroll from the bustling food stalls. She didn't hurry home, though. With a heart as warm as the evening, she darted back and forth, ensuring all our classmates were safely in taxis. I clung to her, mumbling complaints, while she gently seated me by a tree and soothed my chill with a cup of warm milk. It wasn't just my stomach she warmed, but my heart too. Rongrong, the belle of our school, is admired not just for her charm but her genuine kindness. Despite her popularity, she chose me, an orphan, as her closest friend, shielding me from the bullies of our past. She often claims I'm her protector, a title I earned unintentionally when I once chased away a harasser, forgetting our headmistress's stern rule against brawling. Her gratitude knows no bounds, and in the days that followed, her care for me only deepened. As the haze of intoxication thickened, I squinted to see Rongrong had successfully seen everyone off in their taxis, her kindness filling the night air. She turned back to see me still wrapped around the tree, waiting for her. She couldn't help but laugh aloud. With her breath forming clouds in the air, she leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Be smart, share a taxi with them. It's cheaper." "I don't want to." But Rongrong didn't listen to my drunken mumblings. She firmly pushed me, barely able to stand, into the taxi. This moment would become my deepest regret. Had I not had that drink, could I have continued our routine, escorting Rongrong home first before returning myself? But overwhelmed by the alcohol, I lacked even the strength to steal one final glance at her through the taxi window. Rongrong's body was found early the next morning by sanitation workers in an alley, just 400 meters from the food stalls. When I arrived, the police had already set up the cordon. From a distance, I observed Rongrong, lying supine, her head against a large rock, her blood starkly vivid under the sunlight. The crowd suddenly thickened as two officers emerged from behind the cordon, carrying Rongrong on a stretcher. A breeze lifted a corner of the white sheet. I distinctly noticed a faint red streak on Rongrong's pale thigh, subtly glistening next to the streak under the light. A reflection? What could be reflecting? I thought to myself. Reflective like glass, like water. Water? Could this be what I thought? Unwiped and shimmering, the liquid caught the light. A grim hypothesis dawned on me. My Rongrong had been violated. I zeroed in on the glint, but as quickly as it appeared, a white cloth swept over it. Ah! I stood, driven to follow, but as I took my first step, I collapsed. After 3 days confined to the orphanage, the matron finally allowed me out. I accompanied Rongrong's parents to the police station, where we were bluntly informed that Rongrong had died from an accidental drunken fall, striking her head on a rock. Drunk? An accident? That was inconceivable. Rongrong was famously resilient to alcohol. On the night of the farewell dinner, while everyone else succumbed, she alone remained clear-headed. Moreover, there were marks on her legs. Disbelieving, I seized the case report and read every line. The report described the faint marks on Rongrong's thigh as mere scrapes from falling. The reflective liquid I had noted was never confirmed to have been present. I scrutinized the photographs, desperate for a clue, but found only disappointment. Convinced I had not been mistaken, I enrolled in the journalism program at Ning'an University, determined to harness the discipline's rigor to reveal the harsh reality of Rongrong's demise. Yet, the challenge was formidable. No eyewitnesses, no physical evidence. The surveillance was either non-existent or in disrepair. When Rongrong's phone was eventually found, it was irreparably smashed. The severity of the damage struck me as deliberate, as if inflicted by forceful, intentional blows. The damage was so extensive that the phone wouldn't turn on, and the memory card within was equally ruined, erasing all data. The scene bore no signs of a struggle or drag marks, all evidence suggesting that Rongrong's demise was a tragic accident. The investigation had ground to a halt. Even 5 years earlier, as Rongrong's parents prepared to leave Ning'an City, they handed me the phone, advising me to move on. Move on. If only it were that simple. Undeterred, I continued my relentless inquiries, though all paths led back to the same conclusion: an accident. 2 years ago, engulfed by despair, I sealed away the case files in a drawer. Now, I sighed deeply, wrenching myself from the depths of memory. Staring at the phone I just used to speak with Rong Rong, a flicker of hope rekindled in my heart. Determined to rescue Rong Rong, I conceived a single, foolproof strategy. Unearth the culprit. Resolved, I returned to the crime scene. At dawn, I arrived at the historic Riverside Road. Fortunately, the area's essential character remained unchanged, save for some updates to the facades and road surfaces. The iconic food stalls, celebrated for hosting decade-long high school farewell dinners, had been preserved as cultural landmarks. At the stall where our final dinner took place, I began retracing the route Rong Rong would have taken home that fateful evening. There were 3 dark alleys on Rong Rong's regular route home, all unlit. The first was a dead end, not suited for any escape. The third alley was positioned about 400 to 500 meters from the second and just 100 meters from the residential complex's entrance. Noise here could easily catch the attention of security, making it Rong Rong's typical path home. However, just days before the incident, construction had made the third alley impassable, prompting Rong Rong to reroute through the second alley to reach the complex. This shift made the second alley an optimal spot for the perpetrator. Rong Rong's body was indeed found there, solidifying it as the scene of the crime. I hastened to the entrance of the second alley. Rong Rong had relayed in a phone call that she had 30 seconds to escape, yet each time she was rendered unconscious from behind. She had a window to escape, but her assailant was relentless. This was no random act. It was a premeditated murder. The evidence made it clear. A male assailant had ambushed Rong Rong from behind, simulating an accidental fall to mask the murder. The absence of drag marks or signs of struggle, coupled with no discernible fingerprints, suggested the perpetrator wore gloves, managing to catch Rong Rong as he struck her unconscious. As a result, there were no unnecessary traces on the ground. Rong Rong stood 168 centimeters tall and weighed 120 kilograms, which considered her slightly overweight. The criminal is likely a male, taller than 175 centimeters with a robust physique. Furthermore, the initial strike that rendered her unconscious needed to avoid causing any bleeding. Otherwise, traces of blood might have been present elsewhere at the scene. It's likely that the weapon was not a sharp object but something blunt, like a baseball bat. In staging the scene to resemble an accidental death, precision was critical in striking the head at the exact point of the initial impact and ensuring that any internal injuries from the first blow were effectively concealed, as they would be detectable upon autopsy. This demanded a highly controlled use of force by the perpetrator. If indeed a baseball bat was used, taking the above into account, the perpetrator must meet 2 specific criteria. First, they would likely come from a wealthy background. In 2005 Ning'an, fewer than 10 families could casually possess a baseball bat. Second, they would need substantial experience with or a strong passion for baseball to precisely manage the force of the blow. The crime scene was expertly manipulated. The perpetrator was undoubtedly well acquainted with the area. They had either reconnoitered the location beforehand or frequented the area often. Initially, the police cleared the local residents after investigation, pointing to no obvious suspects. Thus, the search narrows to those who were often present near the scene of the crime. The nature of the crime, premeditated murder, suggests the perpetrator bore deep-seated animosity toward Rong Rong, who, due to her strict upbringing, mainly interacted with teachers and classmates. The suspect would need to be affluent, proficient in baseball, acquainted with Rong Rong, and have had the opportunity to commit the crime. Thus, the most likely suspect was one of the wealthy high school seniors who attended the same farewell dinner nearby. Though my theory might appear somewhat contrived, the thrill outweighed my nervousness. For the first time in a decade, I had a distinct analysis and direction for Rong Rong's case. The truth felt as if it was merely hidden behind a veil. Tonight, at that 4 a.m. call, I anticipated receiving the proverbial dagger needed to cut through this veil. To corroborate my theory, I first captured photos of all the 2005 high school graduation pictures in the city under the guise of a journalistic project. I also diligently gathered information about which classes and schools had their farewell dinners on Youth Street, carefully noting these details. By the time I concluded, It was 8 p.m. The process unfolded without a hitch, a testament to the strong relationships I've cultivated with the schools over the past decade. With just 3 phone calls remaining to save Rong Rong, I meticulously prepared for each, outlining the tasks and accounting for potential mishaps. This was a rescue that demanded perfection. Tonight's phone call was pivotal. It was essentially a trial run. Before that, however, there was one last bit of information I needed. I rang up my friend and boss, Chun Xiao, claiming I was prepping a feature on the whereabouts of billionaires a decade later, and asked him to dig up the old Top 10 Tycoons of Ning'an article from 10 years prior. I awaited his response but was met with an unusual silence. I checked my phone, full signal. Old Chun. No reply came, so I inquired again. Everything okay? After a lengthy silence, Chun Zhao's voice finally emerged, though his tone was unsettling. It's fine. I'll send it before 9. He abruptly hung up. I stood there, slightly shocked. Chun Xiao sounded unnerved. Could there be some dark secrets hidden within this top 10 tycoons list? Usually, Chun Xiao would wait for me to end our calls. What was different today? I glanced at the clock. It was 8:30 p.m. I couldn't dwell on Chun Xiao now. Saving Rong Rong was critical. I raced home nonstop and started uploading the day's data into my computer. I sifted through each photo. I consumed 3 cups of coffee. At 4 in the morning, the phone rang. With urgency pressing, I spoke as soon as the call connected, not waiting for Rong Rong to begin. How far are you from the first alley on your way home? About 100 meters. Run to the alley entrance as fast as you can. Immediately, the rush of wind and Rong Rong's heavy breathing filled the phone. I remained silent, my eyes glued to the stopwatch. 14 seconds, 15 seconds. I'm here. Take off your shoes. Then barefoot, face the alley entrance and back into it quickly. Tonight, my primary objective was to confirm whether any change on Rong Rong's part could genuinely alter history. If it could, then my efforts to rescue her would be validated. No response came from the other end. Quick! I yelled, desperation edging my voice as my stopwatch grew slippery with sweat. After a quick wipe on my clothes, the stopwatch marked 19 seconds. The phone caught the sound of 2 thuds as objects hit the ground, followed by Rong Rong's labored breathing as she moved backward. I hastened to provide further instructions. The attacker will come from ahead of you. You need to ascertain a few things. First, do you recognize him? Second, is he wearing any school uniform? Third, what weapon does he have? Fourth, before he attacks, smash your phone against the alley wall. Xiao Yun, am I going to die? Rong Rong, you must trust me. Rong Rong hesitated briefly, then replied, Okay. At 25 seconds, Rong Rong whispered urgently, Xiao Yun, he's coming. Quick, tell me. Okay. Rong Rong's voice was laced with panic. She spoke quickly, her voice trembling. It's too dark to see his clothes clearly, but there are 2 reflective stripes on the sleeves. I can't make out his face, but he doesn't look familiar, and it seems like he's carrying a baseball bat. How tall? Above 180. Snap. Ah, beep beep. The call ended abruptly, and I was suddenly hit with a wave of dizziness. The dizziness lasted about a minute before it passed. Without pausing to think, I swiftly retrieved the case report from Rong Rong's incident. Indeed, the text on the paper started to transform. The death location shifted from the second alley to the first, and the cause of death changed from hitting her head on a rock to smashing her forehead against an alley wall. The scene still showed no signs of a struggle or dragging. The report now indicated that the victim had run vigorously before death. Her shoes were left at the alley entrance. She had entered the alley barefoot and died from the impact with the wall. Inspecting the phone in the evidence bag, it was still shattered, but the details of the breakage had changed. The experiment confirmed my theory. Every change in the incident's details had indeed altered history. This implies that if I can rescue Rong Rong within the allotted timeframe, I'll truly be saving her from a deadly cycle. With only 2 opportunities remaining, my confidence has doubled. I drank a cup of coffee as dense as ink and resumed analyzing the day's collected data. Back in 2005, clothing with reflective stripes was uncommon. I remember one school that was at the forefront of this innovation. I swiftly went through that year's graduation photos. Sure enough, the uniforms from one school sported two reflective stripes on the sleeves. Shengli High School. A fleeting memory sparked in my mind. I shut my eyes, straining to recall, but no clear details emerged. With time pressing, I refrained from dwelling on it and continued sorting through the photos. Shengli High School, the senior class, had 12 sections. Rong Rong had said the assailant was over 180 centimeters tall. This filter alone brought the count down to 50 to 60 potential suspects. I matched these profiles with the student information I had retrieved from the school, marking each name. I then cross-referenced the top 10 tycoons to identify those who had children at Shengli High School that year. The list immediately shrank to just 3 names. Unexpectedly, my boss Chen Xiao was among them. Chen Xiao now appeared mature and steady, scarcely seeming to be my peer. Among the others, one was Zhao Xingho, the scion of the fabulously wealthy Zhao family, ranked second on the tycoon list, and the other was well known to me, my photographic collaborator Ning Zhe. I checked the time. It had reached 6:30 a.m. Deciding to abbreviate my holiday, I arrived at the office by 8:30 a.m. Most of my colleagues were still absent, but I was certain Chen Xiao, our disciplined early bird and work fanatic, would be present. I approached his office. Indeed, his door stood invitingly open. As I knocked, he was silhouetted against the window, engrossed in his morning coffee. I seized the moment to estimate his stature. He appeared to be over 185 centimeters tall, notably taller than Rong Rong's description of the killer as being over 180 centimeters. At my knock, he spun around, his eyes betraying a flash of surprise upon seeing me. "Didn't you take a 3-day break? What brings you back so soon?" "What? I'm eager to work for Boss Chen and he's not thrilled? Come on. Spill it. What do you need my help with this time?" Chen Xiao talked as he sat down and began to pour tea for me. I cradled the warm tea, sipping gently, and proposed, "Old Chen, could you arrange a gathering for me? Bring together all those scions of the top 10 magnates from our younger days. I want to meet them to smooth the way for future interviews. Invite every one of them, every single one. Don't worry, I'll dress to the nines and won't disgrace you." I even coyly winked at Chen Xiao, prompting him to suppress a chuckle and let out a deliberate snort from his nose. "Just you? As if they've never encountered beauties. You wouldn't catch their eye." "Indeed." I edged closer to Chen Xiao, flashing a mischievously knowing look, and said, "But, actually, I once knew a beauty they surely haven't met. Stunningly gorgeous." "Oh? Who?" Chen Xiao arched an eyebrow, leaning back, his face etched with skepticism. Seeing this, I decided not to keep him guessing. It was our high school's belle, Lin Rongrong. She was a vision, one that could devastate hearts. Tragically, she passed away on our graduation day. I monitored Chen Zhao's expression closely. His smile flickered momentarily. Sensing my scrutiny, he quickly smoothed his expression and picked up the teacup, sipped, and while gazing out the window, remarked, "That's truly regrettable." I felt a cold sinking feeling and murmured, "You're drinking from my cup." "Ah? Oh, sorry." Bang! Chen Xiao fumbled, sending the teacup crashing to the floor. Stoically, I collected the shards and disposed of them in the trash. Straightening my attire, I walked toward the door. Before exiting, I glanced back to see Chen Xiao still staring at the bin. I switched to a practiced smile and began, "Tomorrow night at 8. I'll send you the address." Upon leaving Chen Zhao's office, I quickly suppressed my smile and furrowed my brows. "Chen Xiao, my longtime friend, it had better not be you." "Huh? Xiao Yun, weren't you on leave?" I glanced up. Ning Zhe had just arrived at work. "Yes, everything's sorted. Actually, I needed to see you." I ushered Ning Zhe into the conference room and offered him a cup of water. "Ning Zhe, do you play baseball? Could you possibly teach me?" "Baseball? No, I don't play. It's terribly boring." "What's your interest in it?" "Not even? I thought all you wealthy heirs were trained in baseball from childhood." "Who's filled your head with that?" Ning Zhe rolled his eyes at me as he nursed the hot water, casually sinking into a chair before stating, "Only those intent on inheriting their family empires bother with such drudgery. Me, I'm passionate about photography. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." With that, Ning Zhe exited the conference room. I looked out the window, lost in thought. If Ning Zhe was truthful about baseball, his involvement seems increasingly unlikely.
Besides, Ningse stands exactly 180 centimeter tall.
I left the conference room, only Zhao Xingho, the ostentatious aristocrat, remained. Though reportedly elusive, previous efforts to interview him had always fallen through. It looks like tomorrow night's gathering is my only option. I dug out some decade-old photos of Youth Street and drove back to the crime scene. First stop, the initial alley. It was a blast from the past. Everything was identical to 10 years ago, down to the unswapped trash bins, signaling the alley's scant visitors over the years. At the alley's end, I leaned against the wall near a large trash bin, mulling over my strategy. Bang! A sharp noise near my feet jolted me. Glancing down, I saw that a brick had dislodged from where I had just leaned. When I lifted the brick to place it back, I uncovered a hidden cavity behind it. I tentatively stretched out my hand, finding, to my astonishment, a plastic box. On opening it, I found it empty except for a cardboard model cradling a pen. Next to the pen lay a note. "Rong Rong, if you're willing to be with me, please reply." Signed, Xiaonian, June 8th. I clapped a hand over my mouth, stifling a surge of excitement. This letter from 2005, perfectly preserved, attested to the box's ability to fend off moisture and decay, and, most critically, that the box has lain untouched since 2005. I carefully replaced the box and the brick, offering silent thanks to the courageous figure known as Xiao. Should I succeed in rescuing Rong Rong, I vowed to mobilize every resource at my disposal to find this Xiao. I would honor him with a banner declaring, "Great love of humanity." With a clear plan in mind, I cheerily hummed a tune as I drove back home. At 4 a.m., the phone rang on cue. Rong Rong, like last night, dashed to the first alley, face the wall, shoes on, move with all your speed. It's crucial. I monitored the wind's whisper in the receiver and kept an eye on the stopwatch. 13 seconds, 14 seconds. "You're there," Rong Rong gasped for air. Above the garbage bin. First row, fifth brick from the left. "Remove it." A soft rustling emanated from the receiver. Bang! I heard a muted sound from the phone. Not waiting for Rong Rong to respond, I rapidly instructed, "Extract the box from the wall. Open it. Then silence your phone, activate the camera." The moment the murderer appears at the alley's mouth, snap his photo, swiftly stash the phone back in the box, replace it inside the wall, and reposition the brick. 22 seconds passed, filled only with Rong Rong's heavy breathing. She remained silent. I urgently added, "Did you catch all that? This is your final chance. Endure just one more night, and I will rescue you tomorrow." "Understood." I could almost hear Rong Rong articulate that forcefully through clenched teeth. 25 seconds had passed. There was a subtle sound of buttons being pressed on the phone. The call hadn't ended. Shortly thereafter, I heard the grating sound of a brick scraping against a wall. At 28 seconds, I could make out intermittent footsteps from the other end. Then, "Ah!" A muffled outcry followed, and I heard Rong Rong being struck and falling unconscious. I glanced at my phone. It still displayed that the call was ongoing. I clutched my mouth and nose, holding my breath as I strained to hear every sound from the other end of the phone. After the soft, surreptitious rustle of a belt being undone, the faint sounds of a man's deep breaths filtered through. What a monster! I couldn't bear to listen any longer. My eyes puffed up, and my nose turned sore. I pushed the phone away, turned around, and thumped my chest, urging myself to stay calm. It wasn't until the noises from the other end began to fade that I realized my lips were already bleeding. Just when I thought this dreadful call had ended, the voices of two men arguing burst through. "Why would you do this? For no reason. I wish to destroy everything you cherish. You're a scoundrel. Then they scuffled. Abruptly, the call cut off. Shock overcame grief. I realized there were two people at the scene. Who were these individuals? What unfolded after the call ended? Who was the true culprit? Before I had a moment to reflect, a familiar wave of dizziness swept over me, this time with an intensity that didn't wane even after a minute. In a fleeting moment, conjectures sparked in my mind. Battling the dizziness, I opened the drawer and retrieved Rongrong's death report, unchanged as before. I checked the time and waited an additional 30 seconds. The dizziness subsided after a total of 2 minutes. The text on the death report began to transform. Location of death: the first alley. Cause of death: a drunken fall, striking the back of her head. It was still deemed an accidental death, with no trace of others or signs of a struggle at the scene. Previously, the dizziness had lasted a minute, this time 2 minutes, both measured from the end of a phone call. If the allotted time hasn't passed, the death report remains unchanged. This implies that if the allotted time isn't reached, the outcome at the end of the line isn't set, thus the unchanged report. This also clarifies why I didn't experience dizziness the first time Rongrong disconnected. History remained unaltered. Consequently, after tomorrow's final call, I must wait 3 minutes post-disconnection to truly ascertain whether Rongrong is saved. But within these crucial 3 minutes of silence, how can I ensure Rongrong won't again face peril? The rescue's challenge has escalated once more. I slid open another drawer. The old, damaged cell phone that had been stored there, sealed in its plastic sanctuary, had vanished. A bitter smile crossed my lips as tears, salty with memories, trickled into my mouth. At last, a wave of relief washed over me. Glancing at the clock, it was 4:20 a.m. Starved of sleep for 2 consecutive nights, with a formidable challenge looming tomorrow, I was in dire need of rest. Yet my mind was strung too tightly to succumb to sleep naturally. With no other recourse, I set the alarm, swallowed a sleeping aid, and surrendered to slumber. At noon, right on schedule, I woke and drove to Youth Street. Quickly slipping into the first alley to ensure no eyes followed, I swiftly extracted a brick. Thankfully, the box was still intact, and the phone lay within, unscathed. I quickly tucked everything into my bag, replaced the brick in the wall, and hastened out of the alley. Reaching my car, I noticed Chun Xiao casually leaning against it. I instinctively tightened my grip on my bag and cautiously asked, "Why are you here?" Chun Xiao cast a meaningful look at my bag, his expression laden with complexity, and retorted, "Aren't you on leave? What brings you out here?" "I'm working on a feature about the lifestyles of the rich over the past decade. I'd heard one of them resided in the old Binjiang district, so I dropped by for an interview." "Were you successful in your interview?" "Unfortunately, they've moved." Chun Xiao looked like he wanted to say more, but I preempted him, saying, "I need to head back and organize some documents, so I'll leave you to it, old Chun." Chun Xiao reluctantly made way, but his demeanor and movements betrayed a hesitance, as though he had more on his mind. I dared not linger, fearful of inadvertently exposing myself. Only when I started the car did I notice Chun Xiao still hadn't departed. He was staring vacantly at my car's hood. After a moment's hesitation, I ventured a question. "Old Chun, is there anything else you'd like to say?" Chun Xiao seemed to snap out of his reverie, offering his customary smile as he waved dismissively. "Oh, nothing more. You'd better head off. Drive safely." "All right. See you at 8 for the game." "Absolutely." Driving away, my mind buzzed with uncertainty. Chun Xiao had been off these last few days, and earlier, he had peered through my car window and glanced at my bag. Had he seen or discovered something? Glancing in the rearview mirror, I watched as Chun Xiao and a man entered a diner in succession. That man's figure. Could it indeed be my boyfriend, Gu He? Gu He was meant to be on a business trip for a week. Could he have returned early? Yet he hadn't informed me. Pondering over it, I pulled over and texted Gu He, "When are you coming back?" After a 2-minute wait with no reply, I resumed my journey home. Gu He is my colleague. I handle current affairs news, and he focuses on financial news. Originally, it was his straightforward, even slightly stilted, demeanor that drew me to accept his advances. Upon arriving home, Gu He's message awaited me. Got in at noon, headed straight to the news agency to report in. We'll dine together at home tonight. I'm tied up with plans tonight, won't make it back for dinner, and it might end late. Don't wait up. Okay. After a moment's pause, I sent another message to Gu He. Have you seen Chun Xiao today? Took Gu He a whole 10 minutes to respond. Yes. I'm currently having dinner with him as we go over work matters. I breathed out slowly, amused at my own propensity for alarm. Chun Xiao, after all, was Gu He's boss. However, it was only upon reflection that I noticed the discrepancies. Gu He had claimed to go to the news agency, yet was supposedly dining with Chun Xiao, who had been at Youth Street around noon, a good 40 minutes drive from the agency. It seemed implausible for a midday work meal. The only reason Gu He could be so bold without fear of contradiction was that Chun Xiao hadn't mentioned encountering me at Youth Street. Why would Chun Xiao keep it a secret? Why would Gu He need to fabricate? Why opt for such an out-of-the-way spot for a work lunch? These seemingly minor details, unnoticed then, were the harbingers of later strife. At the time, my sole focus was on rescuing Rong Rong, oblivious to the fact that I had already been drawn into their intricate game. I delicately placed the plastic box from my bag onto the coffee table and retrieved my phone. It appeared unscathed. I located the charger I had previously purchased and plugged it in. The screen flickered to life. Yes, I didn't stray. I simply sat on the floor beside the phone. 10 minutes later, it powered up successfully. A thrill of excitement caused my face to twitch and my hands to tremble slightly. I accessed the gallery. The latest photo captured a man at the entrance of a dimly lit alley, baseball bat in hand, his face subtly turned. Due to the dim lighting and the dated 2005 pixel quality, the figure who should have been visible melded into the darkness. His face and even his precise location obscured. Just as I feared all was in vain, I stumbled upon the next image, a group photo, and in the shadowy corner behind the group, a figure seemed to be lurking. I snatched up the phone and dashed into the study. I shut down the phone, removed the memory card, and slotted it into the card reader connected to my computer. Success, I exported and enlarged the photo. Though not as crisp as images from contemporary smartphones, I could definitively confirm that someone was indeed standing in the shadow. The pixelation was severe, but I could make out a reflective streak near the upper part of his face. Though his expression was indistinct, the direction of his gaze was clear. He was looking straight at Rong Rong. I scrutinized the photo of the perpetrator captured by Rong Rong, focusing on his clothing, the baseball bat he held, his hairstyle, and the outline of his face. The man lurking in the shadows of the group photo was unmistakably the same individual. This was unmistakably a premeditated act of murder. Regrettably, the resolution of both images was too poor to clearly discern the facial features. I could only make out a general outline. Based on the photo, the individual appeared to be at least 185 centimeters tall. This immediately ruled out Ning Zhe, who stands at 180 centimeters. Chun Xiao measures at 185 centimeters, while Zhao Xingho's official height is 186 centimeters. The resolution of this mystery seemed poised to unfold at tonight's gathering. Arriving early at 7:30 p.m., I had booked a soundproof business suite at a luxurious 5-star hotel, considering the affluent backgrounds of the attendees. Chun Xiao and Ning Zhe arrived first at 7:50, and were soon followed by the other distinguished young men. Chun Xiao, the son of a billionaire, proved his lineage. The heirs of the past decade's top 10 tycoons were all in attendance. I also encountered Zhao Xingho, a figure shrouded in exclusivity and intrigue. He was more subdued than his illustrious name would suggest, his demeanor serious, attired in a crisp suit. The dinner proceeded in a spirit of goodwill with frequent toasts. I waited, stealthy as a night panther, for the opportune moment. When Zhao Xingho rose and left the table, I discreetly followed him. By the wash basin, I opened with a polite compliment. "Thank you, Master Zhao, for this evening. granting me an audience due to a thin shared connection of an old schoolmate. Upon hearing this, Zhao Xingho's movements stilled. His hand paused in the act of shaking water off, his face a picture of confusion. A half-schoolmate? Indeed. Watching Zhao Xingho's reactions closely, I continued in a relaxed tone. My dearest friend, Lin Rongrong, was a transfer from your Shengli High School. Considering how close she and I are, practically as one, doesn't that extend some alumni courtesy to me as well? I remembered Rongrong had introduced herself as a former student of Shengli High School during her freshman year. Hearing Rongrong's name, Zhao Xingho's brows knitted together, his expression souring. He repeated her name under his breath. Lin Rongrong. Yes, I've been told she was the celebrated beauty of your cohort at Shengli High School. Surely, Master Zhao, you haven't forgotten her. I don't know her. Zhao Xingho quickly refuted, pulling at a paper towel to haphazardly dry his hands. As he was about to leave, I obstructed his path. Master Zhao, seems even the distinguished can be forgetful. I understand you once had an interest in Rongrong. This piece of information came from Ningze. Zhao Xingho fixed a harsh glare on me, his voice low and threatening. Ji Yun, what exactly are you implying? Master Zhao, do you truly believe Rongrong's death was accidental? My question instantly unsettled Zhao Xingho. He strode to the door, glanced around to confirm we were alone, then turned back and whispered urgently. Ji Yun, I know you're investigating Lin Rongrong's past affairs. I can't offer much, but let me caution you. There are forces at play here that neither of us can confront. Don't jeopardize your life for someone who's no longer with us. After delivering this stark warning, Zhao Xingho quickly exited the restroom, visibly shaken. What or who, other than the city's most powerful, could instill such fear in its second? Could it be that both the city's top two figures were implicated in that incident? Suppressing my smile, I glanced at my watch. It read 10:30. Upon returning to the lively banquet, the evening's pleasantries continued. Yet, the answer remained elusive, and my probing had to persist. Over the years, my capacity to handle alcohol had grown, making social engagements effortless. I approached Zhao Xingho with a glass in hand. He seemed to have regained his casual arrogance. Master Zhao, I understand you excel at baseball. I'm keen to learn. Would you consider teaching me? As I spoke, Zhao Xingho's eyes briefly betrayed his disdain, and nodding towards Chun Xiao, he suggested, you should ask Chun Xiao about baseball. He was once the team captain at his school. Turning to Chun Xiao next to Zhao Xingho, I noticed his expression briefly stiffen unnaturally. He took a tentative sip of his drink and replied, I haven't played baseball in a decade. I'm quite out of practice. You should ask Gu He. He's quite adept. 10 years. What an intriguing coincidence. I narrowed my eyes, contemplating. Could Gu He too be a scion of a once wealthy family? I had never seen any mention of him before. Maintaining a composed facade, I casually added, Gu He knows the game as well? I really went the long way round. Do you know Gu He? Zhao Xingho interjected suddenly. Yes, he's my boyfriend, what about it? Hearing this, Zhao Xingho's expression morphed into a peculiar mix of smirking and sympathy, as though he was watching a spectacle. He raised his glass to mine, remarking, No worries. All is well. It appears you were quite close to my boyfriend in the past. Did you go to the same school? I intentionally probed, already aware that Shengli High School's alumni list did not feature Gu He. He wasn't even eligible to attend Shengli High School. Back then, he was nothing more than Chun Xiao's junior. Zhao Xingho. Chun Xiao looked sharply at Zhao Xingho, effectively silencing him. My apologies, I've had too much. I'll drink this one on my own. Carry on. Zhao Xingho raised his glass to the group, his gaze finally resting on me, swirling the red wine in his glass with a profoundly meaningful smile. I settled back into my seat, pensively looking at my wine. The interaction suggested some old entanglement between Chun Xiao and Gu He, sufficient to provoke Zhao Xingho's sardonic grin. I watched as Zhao Xingho drank one glass after another, socializing with those around him. I sensed that tonight's gathering might be more intricate than it appeared. At 11, as some drank and others sang, I carried a bottle and a glass to a secluded lounge. Chun Xiao came in after me. Everything all right? Want me to call Gu He to get you? No need, he's worn out from his trip. I'll just call a cab. I raised the half-filled bottle of red wine towards Chun Xiao. How about a drink? Chun Xiao agreed. Thanks for everything tonight, old Chun. Why so formal after all these years? We both took a sip from our glasses. I watched as Chun Xiao emptied his glass in one gulp, my smile widening. Indeed, I had laced Chun Xiao's drink. Nothing severe, just enough to ensure he'd sleep. I placed my glass down, still smiling, and inquired, Do you know Lin Rong Rong? Which Lin Rong Rong? I laughed derisively, unable to believe he was still playing dumb. I edged closer to Chen Xiao, reducing the gap between us to mere centimeters. I scrutinized his increasingly furrowed brow and then, unexpectedly, I began to speak deliberately. Lin Rong Rong from Binjiang Road. Before I had even finished speaking, Chun Xiao started, his previously narrowed eyes now expanding in horror. Suddenly, as if haunted by a dreadful memory, he emitted a fearful yelp, his hands flailing chaotically in front of him. Crash! His frenzied movements knocked the wine bottle from the table to the ground, shattering it, and red wine flowed freely across the floor. The sound of the breaking bottle seemed to snap Chun Xiao out of his reverie. He gave me a quick glance. Sapped of strength, he collapsed onto the sofa and slowly nodded in my direction. My certainty about his guilt intensified. I withdrew slightly, choosing not to delve further into his earlier feigned ignorance. And while refilling my glass, I queried, Were you intimate with her? Chun Xiao nodded again. You loved her, I declared emphatically. Surprised, Chun Xiao looked up at me, urgently inquiring, Did she ever mention me to you? I swirled the wine in my glass, deliberately vague. Possibly spurred by the alcohol, after 8 years, it was the first time I witnessed Chun Xiao with tears in his eyes. She surely despises me, doesn't she? Chun Xiao refilled his glass, swiftly downing it, then slumped back on the sofa, his eyes glassy. Suddenly, he began to strike his head, his voice a low, repetitive moan. It's all my fault, all my fault. If not for me, Rong Rong wouldn't have died. It's all my fault. His voice was barely audible, but the words Rong Rong and died were clear enough to stun me. I glanced at the doorway. Fortunately, no one was watching our corner. Seeing Chun Xiao come undone, I quickly skirted the coffee table to confront him. Leaning down, I whispered harshly into his ear, Why did you kill her? I didn't. With sudden force, Chun Xiao shoved me away, retreating to the farthest corner of the sofa, his eyes losing focus. He continued to mutter, I'm sorry, so sorry Rong Rong.
I'm sorry.
I gripped Chen Zhao's collar tightly and pressed him once more. Explain yourself. Why did you kill her? It was an accident. Rong Rong, I'm terribly sorry. It was truly unintentional. I never meant to kill you, but... Chun Zhao's voice trailed off into silence. I leaned closer and discovered he had dozed off. Glancing at the clock, it had just struck midnight. I took out my cell phone and opened my chat with Gu He. At 11, I had sent Gu He a message. Be here to pick me up at 12:30. Just now, Chun Xiao had bluntly confessed to killing Rong Rong. The question of his intent no longer mattered. Therefore, there was no need for Gu He to make the trip. I sent a new message to Gu He. I have some unfinished business with old Chun, so there's no need for you to come pick me up. Okay. Call me when you're done, and I'll drive over. As the guests gradually departed, I enlisted Ningzei's help in making sure each was safely in their car. After the last guest had left at midnight, Ningzei came back. Let's go, I'll drive you home. No, head back on your own. Gu He knows where old Chen lives. He'll be coming to pick me up later. Don't worry. All right, take care. I'm off now. Yes. At 3:30 a.m., I splashed a basin of cold water on Chun Xiao to wake him. Chen Xiao groggily stirred on the sofa, struggling in vain. I had made it a point to master knot tying for this very day. Xiaoyun, what is this? I paid no mind to Chen Zhao's bewildered look. I was no longer his docile subordinate. I was the Ji-Yun of 10 years ago, the one whose world orbited around Rong Rong. From my bag, I retrieved Rong Rong's phone and death report, setting them alongside my own phone on the coffee table. The whys and wherefores of a decade ago hold no interest for me now. However, if you wish to see the light of tomorrow, you'll need to work with me to bring Rong Rong back tonight. Revive Rong Rong? Yes, at 4 o'clock, Rong Rong from 10 years ago will call. All you need to do is prevent yourself from killing Rong Rong back then. Prevent myself from killing Rong Rong? Yes, but when I arrived, was Rong Rong? Was she conscious when she called you? Nonsense. How could she have called me if you had knocked her out? Chen Xiao went silent, his gaze fixed on Rong Rong's mobile phone that lay on the coffee table, mired in contemplation. After a moment, as though he had reached a momentous decision, he raised his head, his face etched with resolve. All right, hypocrite, I inwardly sneered. Despite 8 years together, I had never seen through his seemingly mild exterior to the rottenness within. Remembering the details of Rong Rong's ordeal as recounted last night, my anger flared. I advanced, channeling a decade of suppressed rage into my blows, repeatedly striking Chen Zhao's face. It wasn't until my palms throbbed and his face ballooned grotesquely that I stopped. I glanced at the clock. 3:55 a.m. You fiend. If I didn't still need you to save Rong Rong, I'd have ended you right here and now. Xia. Silence. Listen, I don't care how you do it, but you must ensure your past self doesn't return there. Do you understand? Chen Xiao remained mute, and in a surge of anger, I kicked his calf sharply. Did you get that? Chen Xiao groaned, and under my intimidating stare, he reluctantly responded. He understood. At 4 a.m., right on schedule, the phone rang. I answered swiftly. Rong Rong. Sprint into the first alley, run straight to the end, and face the entrance. Through the receiver came the familiar rush of wind and Rong Rong's labored breathing. I kept an eye on the stopwatch. 13 seconds, 14 seconds. Based on previous patterns, the murderer would appear at 25 seconds. Stop there. Rong Rong's breaths were even more pronounced than on previous occasions. Rong Rong. Put the phone on speaker and alert me when he enters. Okay. The line fell silent. No more words were exchanged. Turning towards Chen Xiao, I saw him staring at my phone, tears flooding his cheeks. Rong Rong, Rong Rong. Xiaoyun. Who's there with you? Chen Xiao. Xiao. Rong Rong's tone abruptly intensified, laced with faint sobs. The receiver resonated with their tearful calls to each other. Rong Rong. Xiao. I sensed something was wrong. Just as I was about to seek clarification, Rong Rong abruptly ceased her crying and whispered faintly. He's here. Chen Xiao halted her tears. I positioned the phone before her. Footsteps echoed from the receiver. Chen Xiao declared, Woden Mann. The footsteps on the other end stopped sharply. I regarded Chen Xiao with suspicion. At that moment, the door to the rest area burst open, revealing Gu He. His face was etched with an unreadable mix of fear and disbelief. Ignoring Gu He's abrupt appearance, Chen Xiao persisted. Wooden man, leave now. Head to the old spot and meet the lumberjack within 5 minutes, or you know the consequences. Following her words, Chen Xiao fell silent, the line going quiet with Gu He lingering at the doorway, not entering. The room settled into an unsettling stillness. Soon, running footsteps transmitted from the receiver. My heart climbed to my throat, and I dared not speak, until Rong Rong spoke up. He's gone. I exhaled softly, still tense. I was about to confront a dizzying, uncertain climax in 3 minutes. Rong Rong, don't hang up. Hurry to the community. Fast. And notify me once you arrive. Okay. 3 minutes later, Rong Rong gasped. I'm here. Rong Rong, The danger hasn't passed. Stay in the guardhouse with the security uncle and phone your uncle to fetch you. After I end the call, remain there for another 3 minutes before leaving the guardhouse. Understood? Okay. Rong Rong, see you tomorrow. I managed these words through a tight throat before hanging up. A familiar dizziness swept over me. I set an alarm for 3 minutes later. Holding my head, I crumpled onto the sofa. Gu He approached, his concern palpable. Xiaoyun, what's the matter? Nothing. I took deep breaths, my head not only spinning but throbbing. I faced Qin Xiao, who gazed back despondently. Pushing through the pain, I pressed. What exactly happened back then? Qin Xiao's expression was complex. He cast a discreet glance at Gu He before he began. Slowly. Rongrong's death was an accident. I went to confess to her that night. She got overly emotional, and during our argument, I accidentally knocked her head against a stone. Panicked, I fled. Qin Xiao was fabricating. He was shielding someone. Firstly, all evidence suggested Rongrong was intentionally murdered. Yet Qin Xiao asserted it was an accident? Additionally, in the emotional phone exchange earlier, when both Qin Xiao and Rongrong were sobbing, it struck me. Rongrong had mentioned not knowing her assailant. This means Qin Xiao couldn't be the murderer. But since Qin Xiao confessed to being at the scene, he might well be the man who appeared later. Who then was the real assailant? And why had Qin Xiao insinuated in prior conversations that he hadn't intended to kill Rongrong, leading me to believe he was the perpetrator? What is the killer's connection to him that he would protect him at the cost of Rongrong's life? My head ached fiercely, and a cold sweat drenched my back. I realized I might have been ensnared in a plot from the very beginning of my investigation. At the dinner, I suspected Zhao Xingho of devising this plot to use me to dismantle the Chen family and elevate his Zhao family. Now, however, a sudden, strong intuition struck me. Perhaps it was Qin Xiao who had orchestrated this scheme. He aimed to save Rongrong and protect the killer. Knowing my penchant for revenge, if he was indeed the killer, I wouldn't let him roam free. As the current patriarch of the Chen family, wasn't he worried I might rally other families against the Chens? Or was destabilizing the Qin family his ultimate goal? My headache became unbearable, halting my thoughts. Collapsed on the sofa, soaked in cold sweat, I was paralyzed. Ring, ring, ring. The alarm sounded. 3 minutes were up, and the headache disappeared instantly. I silenced the alarm and quickly grabbed the files about Rongrong's case from the coffee table. Like magic, the words on the pages began to vanish, one by one, leaving no new text after a long wait. Overwhelmed with relief, I slumped to the floor. I had finally saved Rongrong. Xiaoyun! Gu He's alarm shout pierced the air. I glanced up only to see him being forcefully pulled back, swiftly retreating. Around me, everything. Qin Xiao, the table, stools, and wine glasses began to silently shatter. My vision blurred. Simultaneously, my mind was inundated with a torrent of unfamiliar memories. My ears were overwhelmed with a cacophony of noises, my head throbbing as if it might burst, leaving me no chance to delve into these memories. Then, with a resounding bang, I fell to the ground. Ring, ring, ring. The shrill alarm broke through, jolting me from my dream. I silenced the alarm on my phone and took in my surroundings. Why was I lying in bed? Could it have failed? No, the disappearance of the case report confirmed it. I had indeed altered history. Closing my eyes, I tried to recall the strange memories that had engulfed me before I had collapsed. After revisiting those memories, I finally let out a relieved sigh. Back then, I truly did save Rongrong, and together we enrolled at Ning'an University. I majored in journalism and she in marketing. After graduation, I embarked on a career in journalism, with Qin Xiao as my superior and Gu He as my boyfriend. Rongrong faced some initial struggles in her career, hopping between several companies without finding the right fit. However, capitalizing on her stunning looks and amiable personality, she rapidly built up a vast following on Weibo, evolving into an internet celebrity with millions of fans. By 2014, she had even launched her own studio and took on the role of a business owner. Such wonderful news. Truly wonderful. Overcome with joy, I cried. Xiao Yun, have you awakened? I glanced towards the door. Gu He, what's this? Why the tears and laughter? Come on. Get up and let's have breakfast. Gu He, just like in the memories that had recently flooded my mind, was the quintessential devoted boyfriend. He stood there, apron-clad, spatula in hand, his eyes crinkling with genuine amusement. Yet his smile unnerved me. I couldn't forget that during last night's dizzy spell, Chun Xiao had cast a surreptitious glance at Gu He before fabricating the motive for Rong Rong's murder. Could Gu He be the true culprit? But he wasn't even a student at Shengli High School. With too many questions and unsure if Gu He retained any memory of last night, I hesitated to probe or ask. Following the new memories, I quickly finished breakfast and hurried out, clutching my bag. To play it safe, I skipped driving since my car's GPS was linked to Gu He's phone. Instead, I hailed a cab to Rong Rong's place. Rubbing her eyes, Rong Rong grumbled. Xiao Yun, why are you here at this unearthly hour? I barely slept at 4 a.m. Do you recall that night on Qingchun Alley when you called me to rescue you? Rong Rong's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Are you that Xiao Yun? Yes. As tears streamed down her face, Rong Rong sobbed. Xiao Yun, after all these years, I can finally thank you properly. I know without you, I would have truly died. I gently soothed Rong Rong, patting her back until she steadied. Once composed, I pressed her. When did you first meet Gu He? Your boyfriend, Gu He? Yes. Don't you remember? You introduced us after you started dating him. So Rong Rong didn't know Gu He before the attack. I hesitated, then ventured. Do you think he might have been the one who tried to kill you? Rong Rong paused, struggling to dredge up the memory, then slowly shook her head. I don't know. It was too dark. I couldn't see clearly. Have you never looked into finding the perpetrator after all these years? Rong Rong shook her head. Why not? She clamped her lips shut, her eyes veering off into the distance. Seeing this, I bluntly exposed her fears. Is it because of Chun Xiao? Are you afraid of implicating him? Hearing this, Rong Rong jerked around, staring at me in shock before her gaze drifted off again, and she murmured, I'm still alive, aren't I? Let's leave it at that. You! I pointed at Rong Rong, my hand shaking with anger, and blurted out, Lin Rong Rong, you've died so many times, yet you remain lovesick. Do you realize, after your supposed death, your case was closed as an accidental death, and Chun Xiao, shielding the murderer, never mentioned a word. Everyone else may have forgotten you, but it was me, this orphan, who has doggedly pursued your case for a decade. Ever since your call, I've barely slept, desperate to save you. You died 7 times before I could rescue you. Now you live, yet you allow the murderer to roam free. How is that just?
Xiao Yun, I'm sorry.
I raised my hand, cutting off Rong Rong before she could continue. I have only one question for you. Now, do you want to find the murderer and bring him to justice? Rong Rong fixed me with a serious look, her eyes welling with tears, and after a long silence, she gave a firm nod. I pressed the advantage. The murderer declared at the crime scene, I will destroy everything you love. Do you have any suspects? Yes. Rong Rong answered immediately, then shared a shocking revelation. When I was a freshman, there was a rumor that Chun Xiao had a boyfriend. I followed him once and saw him carry a drunk boy from a bar, but I couldn't clearly see the boy's face. They went into a hotel together and didn't leave until 11 p.m. I was so outraged that I had my parents arrange for me to change schools the next day. A boy from over a decade ago? A sudden insight flashed through my mind. Zhao Xingho had mentioned at the dinner that Gu He was once Chun Zhao's sidekick. Yet Rong Rong didn't recognize him. This person must have emerged after Rong Rong transferred, fitting the timeline precisely. Moreover, last night, the mannerisms of Gu He and Chun Xiao carried a peculiar aura. Maybe I shouldn't have been fixated on a school uniform. It seems I must return home to search for any potential evidence concerning Gu He. Luckily, according to my newly accessed memories, Gu He and I are engaged, on leave, and currently setting up our matrimonial home. Upon entry, I found the living room strewn with boxes filled with books and clothing. Gu He was absent. Gu He, I shouted, only to be met with silence. Surveying the disarrayed boxes, I began to sift through them. Inside were notes from Gu He's high school and university years. Curiously, I found no trace of Gu He's high school graduation photo. As I delved deeper, Gu He's soft voice suddenly echoed from behind. Xiao Yun, what are you searching for? I spun around, struck by terror. Gu He stood there, clad in the Shengli High School uniform, sunlight obscuring his features. However, his distinctive, split eyebrow caught the light, glaring more intensely than ever. The broken eyebrow. It all clicked, the shadowy figure in the old class photo, the part of the face that shimmered. That was the broken eyebrow. Gu He was indeed the true murderer. Perhaps my shock was too apparent because Gu He slowly leaned in, his eyes chilling into a glacial stare. My nerves were so frayed I forgot to breathe, Gu He's voice cutting through the air like ice. So, you've uncovered the truth. Why couldn't you be a little less astute? As fear gripped me, clarity emerged. If Gu He retained last night's memories, Chun Xiao likely did as well. But was Gu He aware that Chun Xiao remembered too? I spoke slowly, with deliberate firmness. Wodenmann. Gu He jerked back, straightening suddenly, his eyes still haunted by the profound fear from the night before. He pressed urgently. Did Chun Xiao tell you? What do you think? I seized the moment to rise and approach the window. Subtly, I reached behind and quietly made an emergency call. It was to Zhao Xingho, a precaution I'd arranged on my journey back. Unexpectedly necessary now. Under Gu He's scrutinizing gaze, I noted he was gloved and clutching a baseball bat. As my call connected, Gu He demanded, What else do you know? With composure, I answered, Gu He, everything that should and shouldn't be known, I now know. What's your plan? Will you try to kill me in this home where we've lived together for 2 years? Just as you did Rong Rong. I outlined everything, the location, the people involved, the events, hoping Zhao Xingho was sharp enough to grasp it all. He understood more than anyone the significance of Gu He to Chun Xiao. I was betting that regardless of whether he remembered the events of last night or not, he wouldn't miss any chance to discredit the Chen family. Humph, Lin Rong Rong was asking for it. My brother always said he'd treat me the best. Yet, he was secretly writing love letters to Lin Rong Rong. When I came into this family, I was tormented by that vile old man and insulted by the spiteful old woman. Yet only my brother showed me kindness. All of you had so many people caring for you. Why did you have to challenge me? My brother is the only one who has ever cared for me in this world. Brother? Who? Chen Xiao? A Gu and a Chun, a hidden child? But if your brother was so kind to you, why did you kill his beloved? His beloved? Gu He echoed, his eyes blazing red with fury. He swung the baseball bat violently, smashing the TV on the wall into fragments. After demolishing it, he faced me and continued. I really wanted to join in the fun too, but my brother warned me that my identity was too sensitive for public appearances. So, I tracked them secretly and saw my brother tying Lin Rongrong's shoelaces, carrying her backpack, and even giving her a charming handmade bear. But that bear, I had labored over it for 3 sleepless nights, stitching each part by hand, as a present for him. Why would he, Ji Yun, why would he pass on something I gave him? Gu He lunged at me wildly, his fingers tightening around my neck, brutally pinning me against the window. My back crashed painfully against the glass, and I fought desperately to free myself from Gu He's grasp, my face turning crimson as I gasped for air. Zhao Xingho, you bastard. If you don't show up soon, this might be the end of me. Gu He, he's completely lost it. As my breathing became more labored and my strength ebbed, my mind began to blur. I sensed my end might be near. Bang! Suddenly, the door burst open, distracting Gu He, who slightly loosened his grip on me. I quickly broke free from Gu He's grip and darted aside, my coughs erupting fiercely. Expecting Zhao Xingho, I turned towards the door only to see, to my astonishment, Chun Xiao and Rong Rong. Rong Rong rushed to my side, gently patting my back to soothe my breath. I touched her hand reassuringly, signaling that I was all right. Chun Xiao lingered at the doorway, making no move to enter. Gu He's voice trembled as he called out, "Brother, put down the baseball bat and come here. Don't repeat our past mistakes." These words seemed to cut deep into Gu He, his face a portrait of grief. "Hee, brother. Am I to blame? Or is it you? You vowed never to be with Lin Rongrong, yet why did you write her that love letter? You never anticipated this, did you? That day, that vile man let me return early, and I found the love letter you penned while searching for that box. Brother, how can you fail to keep your promises? That night at the farewell dinner, when my clothes were soaked through, you gave me your jacket to wear. I thought it meant you still cared, but then why did you secretly leave that love letter? You drove me to this." Gu He brandished a baseball bat at Chen Xiao, his voice booming across the room. His entire frame was shaking. "What love letter?" Rong Rong, puzzled, slowly pieced together that she was at the heart of this drama. "You didn't know? Haha. You really had no idea." Gu He's laughter rang out, mingled with tears. He dropped the bat, yanked Rong Rong toward him, and a knife appeared in his hand, which he held against her throat. Chun Xiao, desperate, pleaded. Gu He put the knife down. "Whatever you ask, I'll grant it. Just don't harm Rong Rong." "Anything?" "Yes. Then I want you to die. Will you agree?" Gu He, you. Haha. Not so brave now, are you? All this nonsense about true love. Lin Rongrong, can you see now? Chen Xiao doesn't truly love you. What's the point of all your years of waiting? How do you know? How do I know you've been waiting? Ha ha ha. Think about why I was with Ji Yun. Gu He had completely lost control, the knife grazing Rong Rong's neck and drawing blood. Gu He, for the sake of the 2 years we've shared, please put down the knife. We'll grant any request you make. Shut up. Gu He roared at me, his gaze dripping with contempt. Ji Yun, you're the most tragic figure here. All along, you've been nothing but a pawn. Zhao Xingho used you to dismantle the Qin family and become the wealthiest man. Chun Xiao had you date me to keep tabs on Lin Rongrong's every move, and Lin Rongrong, that manipulator, she lured you with small kindnesses, securing your loyalty to carry out the menial tasks beneath her. You fool. Ha ha ha. No. No. I shook my head, retreated 2 steps, and then fell to the ground, my heart feeling as though it had been struck, the pain nearly suffocating me. I looked at Rong Rong, who was in tears, gently shaking her head at me, saying, "Xiao Yun, he's insane. Don't listen to him. I've never thought that way. A madman, indeed I am a madman. If that's the case, let us all descend into hell together. Chun Xiao, I no longer seek your death. I wish for Lin Rongrong's demise, and may you forever bear the burden of her deaths, in past lives and in this one. Ha ha ha. Lin Rongrong, meet your end." Gu He raised the blade once more, thrusting it mercilessly toward Rong Rong's heart. I acted without thought, leaping to my feet and charging forward. Yet, Chun Xiao reacted faster, pulling Rong Rong to safety as Gu He's blade stabbed deeply into his chest. A profound silence enveloped the scene. This outcome had caught everyone off guard. Both Rong Rong and Gu He cried out simultaneously. "Xiao! Brother!" Rong Rong gripped Chen Xiao, her sobs as desperate as those from their last phone conversation. A goodbye she had believed was final, now overshadowed by a true parting. Chun Zhao's blood poured out, the knife having struck directly at his heart. He was beyond saving. "Rong Rong, forgive me, please don't cry. I've been racked with remorse for 10 years, and at last, I'm free. Let me go. Find someone good and start anew." "No, Xiao, please don't leave us." Another torrent of blood escaped Chen Xiao, his face ghostly pale. He painfully turned to face Gu He. "Brother, I'm sorry. I had thought you cared for Ji Yun, so I supported your union. The evidence against the lumberjack is secured in the safe, protected by the code, you know. If you decide, You can bring him to justice any time. The Chun family is irredeemably corrupt. It's best left behind. I can no longer stand by your side to protect you. Be vigilant, and stray no more from the right path. Brother, please stay. Gu He, gripping Chun Zhao's sleeve, sobbed uncontrollably like a child. Chun Zhao dismissed him with a wave of his hand and then looked down at me, kneeling at his feet. Overwhelmed with mixed emotions, I was rendered speechless, merely gazing at him in silence. Xiaoyun, thank you for rescuing Rong Rong. My life for hers. Shall we call it even? Gu He has endured too much hardship. Could you promise to let him be? Brother. Gu He started to speak, but Chun Zhao quieted him with a raised hand. Silence fell, and Chun Zhao's gaze on me was filled with hope. He was clearly struggling to remain conscious. His face was as pale as paper, his clothing soaked in blood. Biting my lip and feeling a twinge at the bridge of my nose, I could not bring myself to be harsh. I sighed softly and replied, My old friend, I promise. Thank you, Xiaoyun. In our next lives, I hope we can be friends again. With those words, as if he had achieved his last wish, Chun Zhao smiled faintly and closed his eyes. It seems I'm late. The calm voice of Zhao Xingho suddenly resonated from behind, as though he had foreseen this very moment. 2 police officers accompanied him. Without waiting for them to speak, Gu He, wiping away his tears, stood and addressed them. I surrender. A month later, having witnessed Gu He's trial, I brought a bouquet of chrysanthemums to Chun Zhao's gravesite. To my surprise, Rong Rong and Zhao Xingho were also present. They noticed me but displayed no shock. Ignoring them as if they weren't there, I bowed serenely and then turned to leave. Xiaoyun. Rong Rong stopped me. I paused, turning to face the girl who had saved my youth. She parted her lips but said nothing. Her eyes merely blinked, brimming with tears, mirroring the distress she had shown 10 years ago during that encounter with the thug. I sighed silently. I had known since the day I met her, I was destined to lose. I extended my hand to her. Caught in surprise, Rong Rong watched as I smiled. I've lost my job. Won't you take care of me? Of course I will. With a burst of joy, Rong Rong rushed over and embraced me, her tears or perhaps snot marking my shoulder. Zhao Xingho's voice carried a deep significance. Ji-Yun, aren't you curious about the truth behind all this?
No.
Holding Rong Rong's hand, I walked away without a backward glance. Through all these trials, I have learned 2 profound truths. Don't merely listen. Observe with your heart. Cherish those right in front of you. Side story. I dreamt last night. A flashback to an incident that unfolded a year ago. That day, I had just replaced my old phone and was leaving the store. Distracted by the device, I collided with someone, causing my phone to clatter to the ground.
Sorry. So sorry.
The person I bumped into quickly stooped to pick up my phone, apologizing as he handed it back to me. His voice struck a chord of familiarity. When I looked up, I was rooted to the spot. He bore an uncanny resemblance to me but seemed much older, perhaps in his 40s, with white hair frosting his temples. He didn't linger on my bewildered pause and hurried off after returning my phone. Awakening from the dream, I recounted it to Rong Rong, jokingly adding, I need to take better care of myself. I don't want to sport white hair in my 40s like that man in my dream. That person, I think I've seen him too. Really? When? Just before my first death. I was heading home alone and met a mysterious figure resembling you. She was clearly in a rush, handed me a number she claimed was yours, and told me to call it in any dire situation. I had only 7 chances. She made me memorize it before she vanished. I dismissed it as a drunken illusion and didn't dwell on it, especially since you didn't have a phone back then. It wasn't until after my 3rd death that I realized something was off. So the 4th time, I dialed your number. After hearing this, I fell into a pensive silence. I touched my temples, pondering. The future, it seems, holds its share of unrest.